Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host and your moderator. I'm also the creator and the publisher of thechocolateLife.com, author of Discover Chocolate, and all around I know a little bit about chocolate and want to introduce you and share my world with you. Today, we're going to be talking about a topical tip, which is warm weather shipping. This is an evergreen issue. It's something that's come up, every year, and it seems to be something that of an evergreen topic. That no matter how many times we talk about warm weather shipping, that there seems to be some renewed interest in it every year. And before we jump into today's topic, what I do want to do is mention that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like all episodes, is supported by members of the Chocolate Life. If you're not a member, please go over there and become a member. And with that, this is the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. You can go there. You can click on a green button up here. Mine says account because I'm logged in. It'll say join, or this little link down here, it'll say join. You can become a member of the Chocolate Life. And one reason why you want to be a member of the Chocolate Life is that this coming Sunday is the monthly member AMA call. So the link is only available to members. You can find it in it's in this post, this members post. If you're a member, you'll see the link. If you're not a member, you won't be able to see the link. And you can join me this coming Sunday at 10 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time for this episode about where we're going to, it's not an episode, it's just an AMA call. Call in, ask me anything about chocolate or cocoa. But I'm in the middle of writing an article for International Confectionery Magazine about ethical cocoa sourcing. And if you'd like to weigh in on topics or issues, things you think might be you're aware of, you think I might be interested in covering and talking about in that article for International Confectionery, you can join and let me know what it is you think. Right? Today's episode of Pod Save Chocolate, and every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, has an image associated, or a post associated with it. That post is here. And if we click on the post, what you'll do is you'll see that there's a link to the archive. In future, if you use Google Calendar, you can add a link to your calendar in advance of the episode so you get reminded of it. And there are also all sorts of resources associated with the topic we're talking about. And this particular episode, what I'm going to be talking about the main resource that I'm going to be using is this resource, which is a post on the Chocolate Life. It's been there for a while. And I'm just going to click on this card, and you can follow along with me today. Here is what we're going to be talking about in terms of summer shipping tips and tricks, as well as general issues associated with shipping that have come up over the course of the last decade or so. Right. So follow along if you want, or after the fact. Don't worry about if you're listening to this or you don't have a big screen and you can't follow along. The links are in the episode, so you can go back to the episode after the fact and be able to follow along and follow the individual resources as I go through them during the episode. I want to, this is actually the first time I've reused an image. So you'll see that the image for this episode is also the image for the post. First time ever. I thought it was I couldn't improve upon the use of this image. And I do want to say that there is a link right here to the original post on the Chocolate Life archive. So you can go to the Chocolate Life archive and follow along and look at the original post. I still haven't got single sign-on set up for this yet, but when we do, you'll be able to interact in the forums. And we're going to rename it, rather than the archive, we're going to rename it forums, and we'll take care of all that stuff. But I just wanted to let you know that we're in the process of completing that. And you will be able to, you can right now go and follow along on all of the correspondence back and forth, the chat thread with other members on this topic. So I just wanted to point out that was available. All right. So the first thing when it comes to summer shipping, tips and tricks, and in shipping in general, is that what you want to do, right, and for efficiency's sake, is to set up what in a kitchen would be called a mise en place, right? Or just a shipping station. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you have everything that you need to get your shipping done in one place, and that you don't want to have to set up and break down and set up and break down all the materials that you need, right, to ship every time you get ready to ship. Um, and you should, over time, think about how many wasted steps you're taking, right, in terms of reaching things and getting stuff done. Right. So if you have to move 5 steps around or 3 steps around or turn around and go across the shop to get something to do this, you want to eliminate as much of that extra movement as possible. Now, ideally, all right, this shipping station is in a cool place. So if your workshop is at 68 degrees, if you can get your shipping station in a room and you can keep that shipping station down at 55, yeah, in the middle of winter or in the middle of summer, you may need to put a sweater on or a vest on or something like that to stay warm. The cooler your product is and the cooler all of your shipping materials are, right, the longer your shipment will last without a lot of extra shipping, a lot of extra cooling materials. So a lot less ice, a lot less everything. Make sure, right, if you have that, make sure if you have the option to have a dedicated room, make that room as cold as possible. It needs to be above freezing, right? But it should be as cold as possible. And I learned this from a personal experience. I was working for Vintage Chocolates in the late 1990s and early 2000s, shipping Michel Cluzel and Dumori out of a refrigerated warehouse in Elizabeth, New Jersey. So I was selling chocolate into um, primarily restaurants and hotels, restaurants in New York City area, but was also shipping chocolate to places like where I am now, Arizona, in the middle of the summer. And because this refrigerated warehouse primarily handled cheese and other dairy, all of the rooms were set at 34 degrees Fahrenheit, so 2 degrees centigrade, and everything that we worked with was at that temperature. The boxes, any filling material, the chocolates themselves, everything was at that temperature. And everything was held at that temperature until it actually made its way onto the truck, right, to get ready to ship. So whether it was UPS came by, FedEx came by, some other service came by, um, everything was held at 34 degrees until it went out into the truck. And I can tell you from experience that if you organize things that way, you can get an extra day, right, at no extra, with no extra shipping costs, because you're shipping a bigger box that's heavier with a lot more ice and other materials in it. So number one, set up a shipping station, right? Make sure that everything is organized. And if you need to change the organization, the moment you say, oh, is there a way for me to reduce the amount of steps I need to take, or the amount of reaching I need to do, right? Make sure you have this mise en place, make sure you have the shipping station. And at the end of the day, get ready and restock it so you don't have to stop in the middle of shipping, stop in the middle of wrapping in order to go more boxes or more tape or more fill or whatever it is that you're using to do this. And if at all possible, get this room, if you have the ability to put it in a room, as cold as you can stand it. Really, really important. And I had forgotten to mention, I'm going to take a quick step back. I had forgotten to mention that number one, if you're watching this, just put a comment in the live chat on YouTube. Let me know where in the world you're connecting from. Just I'll get that shout out up on screen. And then if you have any question about any of what it is that I'm talking about today, go into the live chat, put it into the chat. I'll see it here as a question. I'll get it up on screen, and I will do my best to answer any question that any of you have live. Right. And if there is a resource that is mentioned, and I will put it in the text of the post when we get done afterwards. And so it will be there for everybody to share. So just really, really important that if you have these questions. So after this shipping station mise en place, right, one of the things that I know from experience is that one of the hardest things in the world to organize is shipping labels. Now, this is this is easier now than it might have been a decade ago. And I was shipping chocolate on an almost weekly basis from about 2009 to about um, um, gosh, how long was it? Maybe before that. It's well before 2009. I shipped chocolate for nearly a decade, right, out of my own business, right? And so these are things that I learned not only when I was working for Vintage Chocolates, but also what I learned, right, in my own experience shipping chocolate. Uh, the number one bane of my existence in shipping, right, was shipping labels. And at the time, there was very poor integration between the software which took the orders and the shipping software and the integration of the two. This has become a lot better over the course of the last decade or so, but it is still something to focus on. Um, I spent a significant portion of my time getting boxes ready to ship, copying information out of the shopping cart and making shipping labels. I was primarily using USPS at the time. I had been using UPS and FedEx, but I found out that for my purposes, USPS provided better service at lower costs at the time, right? And there was no good integration between the shopping carts that I was used two or three different ones over the course of a decade, and the USPS shipping label and click to ship interface. Maybe better now, but think about that integration. If you have to do any copying of information, any hand editing of information, it's going to slow you down, and it's going to slow you down significantly. And so when you think about what shopping cart you're going to buy, it's really important to think about what the shipping label integration is going to be, right? Um, Otherwise, you're going to be up against a deadline during a busy time of the year, not necessarily the summer, but a busy time of the year, and you're going to say to yourself, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to print all the labels that I need." Right? Um, this is really, 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 really important. Um, uh, and there are now a bunch of services that do aggregated shipping. So you can decide which of UPS, USPS, or FedEx might be the least expensive option, and the software will generate the proper label associated with it. That wasn't the case when I was shipping chocolate. That's one of the things that has improved over the course of the last decade. And there are now many of these services will offer you also discounts for doing so. Think very, very carefully about what you're using, right? And the amount of time that's required to physically generate a label from your shopping cart. Totally important, right? Another thing that many people don't consider, right, but is really, really important, are how the shopping cart calculates sales taxes, right? So I was in New York when I was doing all of my shipping of chocolate. And the thing that was challenging about New York is that I needed to understand that there were like close to 100 different taxing jurisdictions in New York State. And if I was shipping out of state, I wasn't required to collect sales taxes. But if I was shipping to a destination in New York State, because I was in New York State, I would need to collect sales taxes. Right. And so you need to make sure that your shopping cart is set up to collect all of the sales taxes you need to collect, and then is able to generate a report, which you can then import into QuickBooks, or whatever your accounting software is, so that on the quarterly basis, when you're required to go report sales taxes, you're able to do this. Again, this is an aspect of integration, which in many cases better now than it was a decade ago. But a decade ago, what I need, well, it was 60 taxi jurisdictions in New York, I see from looking at it. But I needed to go in and generate a report and then hand copy all of that information out of the shopping cart into whatever software I was using to generate my sales tax receipts. It was time consuming and cumbersome, and it was just a real nightmare. So make sure as you're doing your homework on the shopping cart that you make sure that you know that it can calculate sales taxes directly. Often this requires a subscription, right? At least it did, a decade ago, that I needed to subscribe to a service that would keep me up to date with respect to changes in sales taxing jurisdictions on a state by state basis, right? So keep it in mind that there may be an extra cost associated with updating the sales tax information that's in your shopping cart. So having got all of that stuff out of the way, let's go talk about setting yourself up for successfully shipping when the weather turns warm. Right. So this morning here in north central Arizona, it's 83 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 34, 35 degrees centigrade, and it's only 10 o'clock in the morning. It's going to get hot today, and so if I was getting ready to ship, number one is I'd like to wait as late as possible, right, to ship. If I am using gel packs or ice, you want to make sure that all of the labor associated with shipping happens as late as possible in the day, based upon when that if you're if you've arranging for either UPS or FedEx to come by and pick it up, that you can be done on time. But you want to make sure that you do it as late as possible, because if you are going to be using an ice pack of any form, that you put it into the box and it's not sitting in a warm place in your facility for longer than it needs to be. Um, it seems obvious, but it's one of those things that if you're not thinking about the way you structure your day, you might get stuck in production somewhere and overlook it, and all of a sudden you're running at the last minute. And this is one of the reasons why you need to be efficient, right, about the time it takes to put together a box and get it out the door on time to meet the shipping deadline. So the number one thing that I learned, right, is that the best way to ensure that the chocolate that you're shipping, right, arrives safely at the other end, is that you have enough space in the box, right, so that nothing associated with the chocolate inside comes close to touching the outside of the box, right? So if you've got a bar and it's 5 inches in long, you probably want to have 3 inches on either side, right? So you're looking at so what I say, 5 plus 6, you're looking at 11. So you probably want to have a 300 millimeter wide box, almost a 12-inch wide box, right? Because you want whatever it is that you're packing in the center of the volume that is associated with the box itself. You want to make sure that your package is as far away from the inside of the box, right, the inside side of the box, as you possibly can, right, within reasonable limits. So, if you're using UPS, they're going to use something called dimensioned weight, dim weight. And so they're actually calculating weight in part by the volume of the box, right? But you could also be using USPS flat rate boxes. And so it's important to know that you are using not the smallest possible box, right, but the box that provides you with at least a couple of inches, right? So at least 2.5, 5 centimeters, right? And five is better, of space, right, between whatever it is that's in the box and the walls of the box, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to fill that space with some form of insulating material. Um, when I was working at Cluizel, or Cluizel at Vintage Chocolate Shipping Cluizel and Demori in the middle of the summer, we were using starch peanuts. So this was packaging peanuts made from starch. They were compostable. If you put them in water, they deliquesce immediately, but they provided a material that wouldn't settle, right? So that if you put a bed of these down in the bottom of the box and then put something on top of it, that the box that you put inside of it wouldn't migrate towards the bottom of the outer box. So use something that will provide you with a dense a material that will not settle and will not move around, right? And that will provide essentially a large dead airspace. Air is a great insulator, right? And it's free and cheap, right? But no matter what it is, it could be the kind of the blow up pillows, right? Are good, right? And because they don't, unless they pop, they don't tend to settle, right? But make sure that you have something which is going to keep the product in the box away from the walls. Now, ideally, one of the things so that's it. Number two, the other thing that I learned is make sure that you tape all of the seams of the box. There are 6 seams on a cardboard box. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you tape all 6 seams, right? What you want to do is you want to keep any cold air inside the box and you want to keep any hot air outside the box. And so by taping the seams of the box, all 6 of them, what you're doing is you're reducing the amount of migration of air, right, from the inside of the box to the outside of the box and from the outside in, right? So first thing is, you may be tempted just to tape the longitudinal seam at the bottom of the box and the long seam at the top of the box. No, 2 is not enough. Do all 6, right? And it's amazing what that little bit of attention to detail, right, will mean when it comes to adding several hours or more to the amount of time that the product inside the box will survive. The other thing you want to do is before you put any fill in the box is you want to make sure that the box is insulated. And the question is, I'm going to scroll down here. The question is, what kind of insulation are you going to use? Well, so this is a common kind of box you might use. So we have an outer cardboard box, and then we have an inner styrofoam container. One of the challenges that I have with this is that this tends to be a very expensive solution. You have to get these boxes. They occupy a very large amount of space, so you can't ship them in a folded down form. The boxes will ship folded down, maybe, if the containers or if the styrofoam containers are not already inside them, right? But what happens is if you have 100 of these things, you can imagine how much space you need in order to be able to keep them around. So while this is perhaps one of the most um, most most effective starting points, it is also one of the least efficient from a space perspective. It's also one of the most costly, and it is also one that is the least recyclable. Release you can't compost the styrofoam. You can't recycle this. There's nothing you can do with the styrofoam. But I do want to point out that there's something really, really important about this box. Number one is you'll see that it has perishable notices, right? It has this side up notices, right? It has rush. It has all these indicators, and these should be on at least 4, if not 6 sides of the box. So no matter how the person who's handling your shipment, the driver in the car, whoever it's going to be, they're looking at it and they go perishable, rush. Keep out of direct sunlight might be another thing you might want to put in front of it. I would not say that there's chocolate inside of it, because if you said that there's chocolate inside of it, somebody might go, there's something tasty in here. I'm going to go find a way for it to disappear off the back of the truck. So I would not do that. I purchased something online of high value, and what they did is they printed a picture of an aquarium on the outside of it, a knockdown aquarium, rather than what was actually inside of it, which was a bicycle, right? And so, while it's really, really great to identify that what's inside is perishable and there's a this end up and there's a rush and keep out of direct sunlight, all of those things are valuable. One question is to ask yourself is, can I get the box already printed with this information? Or am I going to purchase labels? And then what are the cost of those labels and how much time does it take me to apply those labels? Also, this is something to consider. White does a really good job of reflecting heat. And so maybe I do want a white box as opposed to a craft box. This may make it a little less recyclable, a little less something to consider as you're purchasing them. But having a white box, having a white layer of paper on the outside of the box could be really, really valuable in terms of reflecting heat away from the product. If you had a dark brown box or a standard cardboard box, the brown of the cardboard is going to absorb more heat. it's going to absorb it faster, and it's going to put it through to the inside a whole lot faster as well. So something to consider is making sure that whatever you purchase has got is labeled on the outside properly. Maybe it's white, and think hard about styrofoam containers because number one is if you've got, as I say, if you've got a lot of them, they take up a lot of space, and if you and there's no way to recycle the styrofoam. So this is actually probably my preferred method for wrapping chocolate. It is this bubble. This is Mylar faced bubble wrap, and it's Mylar on both sides. Right now, this is a package which is put together, which is designed to fit a specific sized box. Right. Um, you can get these packages for standard size shipping boxes. There are companies that make these which fit the standard USPS boxes, for example, right? The flat rate boxes. So that's something to consider, right? These are not all that recyclable, right? Just I will say that, but they are very lightweight. They don't occupy an enormous amount of space, and they fold down out of the way. So if you're not using them, they're not occupying a lot of space. And so part of the mise en place, part of getting ready is you say, okay, I've got 20 boxes to get out today. The first thing you probably want to do is you probably want to make sure that all of the boxes are, set up and taped, right? Right. If there are labels you need to put on the boxes, put those labels on, and that you have whatever it is you're using for this bubble Mylar bubble, or the Mylar bubble Mylar insulated part of it is all put together before you start. Now, I didn't have these when I was shipping, but what I did is I got a very long roll of the Mylar bubble Mylar, and then what I would do is I would cut it into pre-cut lengths, right? So I would have, and then I would, create a cradle, right? So I would create a cradle. And so I would use at least two pieces, and I would one piece go this way in the box and the other piece go the other way in the box, right? And so I could very, very quickly, very easily, I would cut them in different lengths depending upon the size of the box. I could slice them to make the most efficient use of the material that I had, right? So it's not necessary to actually go to the expense of purchasing these pre-built ones, right? You can construct them yourself and, use less material. And if necessary, double up. If you're looking at, the weather, another thing you should do is you should, have a weather app and you say, okay, what is the weather in where the destination is? What do I need to do? And so by using a Mylar bubble Mylar approach, what you can do is you can, if you're using rolls, you can put multiple layers in when it's going to be a real challenge at the other end. So that's another thing to consider. So another thing to do is this is a sort of hybrid. It is a box, right, which has a layer of insulation in the box, right? And that insulating layer at least is faced on one side with Mylar. So this box is designed to keep cold in. Now, if there's no Mylar on the outside of this, it's not designed to keep heat out, right? But if it keeps the cold in, that's a real start. It's really, really important. And you'll notice it folds up. And so depending upon what this insulation material is, if it's styrofoam, I'm not a big fan. There are other forms of insulation which are, in fact, compostable. So take a look at it. But this represents a real good option, right, for working for a real good hybrid compromise between a fully set up box and a box that you put together entirely from scratch, right? And I only have the three of them. I thought I originally had four, but I got rid of one of the examples. So think about this, right? So if we're looking at a box like this, right? So let's say that you decide that this is the way you want to go. What I would do, right, is when I knew that it was going to be hot, I would take a Mylar bubble Mylar envelope, right? Put all the chocolate in the Mylar bubble Mylar mylar bubble mylar envelope and seal that, right? And so there was an extra insulating layer inside the box, right? Then what I would do is I would use a fill, right? Which is cornstarch peanuts, as often as not. But if I received a lot of shipments to me, I ended up having a lot of bubble wrap. I ended up having a lot of shred. I ended up having a lot of other materials around. And I would always make sure to recycle every bit of material that I scavenged from the shipments that I got. Number one, it saved costs, right? If I was able to reuse something, I didn't have to go out and purchase it, right? So really important way to think about that, to get the material that gets sent to you and reuse it, right? And I actually, mentioned this, in the shipping notes, is that I'm using recycled material in here, and please, either dispose of responsibly or reuse yourself, right? Um, so it's really important. So I would get a box like this, although I was doing handmade versions of this, right? A box where I would use um, lengths of this mylar bubble mylar to construct a um, an insulated layer inside the box, right? And then I would put the fill inside that, and then whatever the chocolate was in an insulated envelope, and then fill the void around it, right? And then make sure that there was enough fill, like the cornstarch peanuts, that what would happen is that when I closed the top of the box and taped it down, what was inside was in compression. And that compression would help keep everything from moving around. So the box is not going to settle. It's not going to move towards this. The chocolate is going to be centered, and it's not going to move up or down, left or right, back or front within the box. Right? So really, again, it's a sort of basic kind of thing, but it's a really important thing to consider. Now, if I did need to put an ice pack in the center of it, ice packs are a real challenge a lot of the time. And so this is what I ended up settling on, right? So this is from a company, and by the way, I have no connection whatsoever to this company, Cameron Package. So there's no affiliate link. It's not something that I am compensated for anyway. Is that they produce this stuff called Thermopack, and this is it looks like sheets of ravioli, and they come on long strips, long rolls, but they're shipped to you dry. So you're not paying for the weight of whatever the material is, which is usually a lot of water. So you're not paying for that, right? When you are shipping, when you're getting the product shipped to you. What you do is you take these sheets and you rehydrate them. You put them in water, right? This soaks up the water, and then you put it in the freezer. Right? And you may not have room in a home freezer or something like that, but having a small chest freezer is not a bad idea to do that. And they have small ones and they have big ones. And the thing which is nice about this is that you can wrap this completely around the product, right? So you can wrap this. So if you've got the product inside an envelope, which is made from this mylar, bubble mylar, and it's sealed, so there you don't have a humidity problem, but you could throw a little silica gel pack in if you wanted to, right? You could wrap these sheets completely around the package inside so that you're providing cold 360 degrees. Very cool, right? But the nice thing about this is that you're not paying for the volume and weight of the water, right? Um, when you're shipping it to yourself, it arrives very compactly, and it's just a really elegant solution to having a lot of these ice packs that you can cut to fit exactly the size and shape that you need. I mean, this is a really elegant solution. I really like it. It was very effective for me. And so when I think about the idea of shipping from as cold as possible, right, and then insulating the box, and then making sure that the package itself is inside something which is itself insulated, and then, if necessary, wrapping that with this ice packet, um, really, really, really solid way to make sure that I don't have, I might have ice on the bottom and ice on the top, but there's no ice on the ends, and so heat is getting into the product from the ends, right? Right. And if you're making sure that the whatever it is you're shipping is centered in the volume of the box, right, and that you have at least, I would say, 2 inches, if at all possible, of dead space, and that dead space is equally distributed on all sides of the what it is you're shipping, you will you will be able to breathe a bigger sigh of relief, and be more confident in whether or not your shipment is going to make it to the destination in good shape. Another thing that I am so this was this is a dead link. I left it here as a dead link, but here is our examples of what it is I'm talking about. So this is a craft tape, self-adhesive, that can be used to recyclable, perhaps compostable, that can be used to um, tape the box shut, rather than using a clear cellophane, a clear plastic tape. Right. Now, I'm not recommending that you use this particular supplier, right? Because I think it is a retail supplier that is very, very expensive. But I just wanted to give you an idea that here was an example of what to use, right? What I am missing, what I'm missing is that this company actually allow you to customize the tape. So you could print the name of the company on the outside on the tape, and maybe perishable and rush and other kinds of things on the outside of on the tape itself. So when you're taping it up, you don't have to go through an extra step, right? Um, but here's another company. This is a Canadian option, but it is a recyclable craft tape. There are two kinds here, right? One of which is a water-based adhesive, which requires either a special dispenser or that you have a wet sponge that you can use to wet the adhesive. I like um, things that are self-adhesive and don't require water. Just from I've accidentally knocked these things over and gotten a lot of gotten boxes wet and all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily good. Again, I'm not necessarily recommending that you go to this company because I think that they're a retail seller. You want to go find a company that's supplying this kind of product, right, to companies like this, and to find out if there's anybody who can do a customizable, can print your name on the tape. I don't recommend plastic tape of any kind, right? A cellophane tape, a plastic tape, no matter what it is. You know, um, because number one is it makes the box much more difficult to compost or recycle or to reuse. Just stay away from them and look at this craft tape. And when it comes to, I mentioned, having some sort of envelope inside the box that you might use. So you're putting the chocolate in something, and then you're putting that inside the fill of the material. And then if you need to have a an ice pack or something like that, you put it outside the internal envelope and then in the fill. Again, I have no relationship whatsoever with this company, and I'm not making a dime from this, and I don't even think that this is going to be necessarily the best company to work from. But I wanted to give you an idea of some options, which are really real ones. So this is an insulated snack bag, for which it's possible to customize. You could put your business name on this insulated bag. There are a bunch of different colors that you can use, right? If you wanted to. There are, let's see, I want to make sure that I'm on the right page. My cursor focus is on the right page. There are a number of different styles and a number of different prices. Some are zipper shut across the top. This represents a real fun way to solve this problem of how do I keep the product that I'm shipping in good condition, right? And do it in a way that provides your customer with, oh, they have something useful at the other end. They're not going to throw it out. They might keep the chocolate, right? They could keep the chocolate in the and put it in their storage area. They might put other chocolate and use your bag. It's a great way to make sure that your branding, right, goes through to your product in a very, 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 very useful way. Now, I don't think I'd want to spend $45 on something like this, but there's little as $2 a piece in small quantities. And so that may sound like a lot, right? But if you're shipping in the summer, you're calculating in all these prices as a part of warm weather shipping. So if I were doing this again now and I had access to these kinds of materials, I would go, in fact, looking at all these different styles of insulated coolers at different prices, right? And I'm going, this is what I would do, right? I would want to make sure that, when anybody um, got a shipment from me, it would either say chocophile.com, which was the name I was using for part of the time I was shipping, or the chocolatelife.com, which was the name for part of the time that I was shipping, that every single order had this kind of, and I might do it year round, right? Right. Would have something like this inside of it. And again, you put the chocolate inside this, you perhaps roll it up, you fold it up, and then what you're doing is you're putting this in the center of the box. And if necessary, you're putting the gel pack or sheet around the outside of this. If necessary, you could. Now, I often used a a crepe paper. So this is a multi-layer crepe paper in craft, right? And I would wrap, if I needed a space around a little package like this, and because I didn't want the ice or gel pack to become directly in contact with the outside of this, what I would do is I would wrap it in this crepe paper. I'll see if I can find some. I'm not a huge fan of. I know that Uline is really, really, really convenient. They have a lot of stuff. Price tends to be good. They got great delivery terms. Um, you know, I'm not a fan of the politics of the owners of the company. And so I try to find alternative sources. But if I can find a link on Uline to this crepe that I'm talking about, I will put it in here. Because it does I think a really, really good job. And there's some other alternatives for materials that you can just wrap and provide some additional distance or spacing. If I was putting a big gel pack directly against the outside of this, I would worry about uneven cooling, and this differential in temperature from one side to the other could create a problem. And so something to consider that way. Right. So these links are all here. The pictures are all here. Again, I'm not recommending either of these things, but these represent ideas for further research you may want to go look at. Again, here are the gel packs that I started using that I really, 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 really like. So let's go back up here to the top and start talking about some things. Successful warm weather shipping. So number one, we've talked about taping all the seams of the box. Making sure that the box is large enough. Putting the chocolate inside something that is insulated itself, inside the insulated container. These are all things that you can do, which will make the likelihood of the product arriving at the other end much more likely. And if you can ship from cold, you can give yourself a lot of extra time, right? Because it will take a lot longer for the insides to warm up. It seems obvious. It is in fact obvious, but it's not something that people do very, very often. So something to consider. So these are all highlighted. These are all highlighted here in all of these tips and tricks for successful warm weather shipping. You can go through them, and so that if you want to review them, they're here, right? And then, except for this last one, which is make sure the package is insured. It may take a couple of weeks or longer, right? It could take 90 days for USPS to process an insurance claim because that's just the way it works. But make sure that it is insured, right, as a part of what goes on. Now, again, when I ship USPS flat rate, there's $100 of insurance automatically. So, especially if you declare that things inside are perishable. So, right. So just to consider that. The other one that you want to do, the other thing you want to make sure that you're doing is you want to make sure that you fully account for the costs of all the different components of your shipping. And number one, that includes the labor. Now, again, you may not pay yourself to do this on a regular basis, right? But when it comes to a really, really busy season, summer is not going to be a busy season for most people, but in the winter, you want to know how long it takes to put together a box, right? And you want to make sure that if you actually have to pay somebody, right, an hourly wage, to do this work for you, that you have calculated that cost into the cost of the finished shipping. Now, so what I did is I would say, here's 20 boxes that I need to get ready today. I would time myself from the start until the time I got all of them done and divide and say, I can do 4 shipments an hour. I can do 5 shipments an hour. I can do 6 shipments an hour, whatever the number was. And then I could divide by minimum wage, $15 an hour, make sure it's burdened, right? If you do have to pay any fees associated with it, even, less so on a 1099 employee, right? That you're not paying any form of taxes or anything on, right? But you want to make sure that you have fully account for what's being done. So as it says here, in 2009, when I wrote this, I was paying $15 an hour, right? Just used $15 an hour. And so if I could do 6 boxes an hour, it cost me $2.50 in labor, right, to get that box ready to go, right? And even if you got a full-time employee, you're paying, an annual salary, figure out what it costs, right? Then make sure what are the individual costs associated with all of the elements. How much does a box cost, right? How much does tape cost? How much do the labels cost, right? How much does the fill cost, right? If you have to dedicate a lot of floor space to styrofoam containers, right, which you can't knock down, how much rent am I paying on the space that those boxes occupy, right? So think about what all the costs are, right? And now what you have is you have the per box cost of packing and materials, right? So I know what the labor is, right? I know what the cost of all the materials are associated with getting that box ready. And now you can say, oh, I'm going to charge $5, right, shipping and handling to get this box out the door to you, right? And in warm weather, throw the gel packs in, and it's going to cost $10, right, or $12, right? But what you've done is you've actually calculated the actual cost. You just haven't, put your finger up in the air and go, I'm just going to charge $3.95 extra, or I'm going to charge $4.95 extra, right? And keep in mind, this is a really, really good loss leader, right? What you can say is to someone, oh, you've made an order, placed an order which is over $100. So what you can do is you can say, I'm going to waive the warm weather shipping extra costs, right? And you just as an incentive to close larger orders, above $75 is this, above $100 is that. This represents something the fixed cost of, right? And you can go and say, this might be significantly less expensive than a 10% discount, right? Or some other kind of offer, right? You could do a BOGO at a certain thing, buy one, get one, and give the warm weather shipping costs, right, as a loss leader for somebody who's making a much, much larger order. Just really, really important to consider that if you don't actually know what these costs are, you don't actually know what the trade-off is and where you can make an offer. And this might be something if your shopping cart allows you to do it, you can do an A/B split. You can test, one offer against another offer, right, and see which one gets more traction. Free warm weather shipping, right, might be a real incentive for people to purchase in the summer when they wouldn't ship or they wouldn't purchase from you, right, over a minimum price. So just, think about that. But again, if you don't know what it costs you, you don't know what you're giving up, right? So you don't know the value of the time, the value of the materials that you're giving up. And so you won't understand how this fits into the cost of goods sold aspect of things, right? So you need to put this into the cost of goods sold side of things. And how does that get marked up in terms of gross margin? I mean, these are, if that's the way you want to handle it, right? So, being aware of this, right? So again, I do the example, this is 2009, would I be charging $15 an hour now? No, I'd probably charge $20 an hour. And I know that from inflation, I'm probably charging like maybe 50% more for, the actual cost of materials. Could be more. I haven't done that work. So this $3.50 per box might be $4.50% per order. right? So just get yourself this number, right? And so you know what it is that you're dealing with. And it may not be obvious, right? May not be an obvious, is make friends. And this probably is the number one tip that I would give to anyone who is involved in shipping chocolate, right? Which is, when I was shipping out USPS in my local post office in Westchester County, New York, right? When I first started off, I would take all my boxes to the front counter, right? I'd walk in and I'd take them to the front counter, and I have 10 or 12 boxes that I needed to ship in big bags. And I do that. And I would ask them, they're already click and ship, they were just accepting the boxes. But when you're around Christmas time, or some other holiday, if you've got a lot of boxes and you're bringing them in, you might stand in line a long time. It could be really, really crazy. And so after a short while, one of the things that they said to me was, if you have a lot of boxes that are just ready to go, you can take them around the back to the back dock. And I have to drive through something that says, no authorized entrance. But they said, listen, it's okay. You can go. We give you permission to go and drop around the back. And just to let you know, number one is that the front door closes at 5 o'clock, but the back door closes it. The back door doesn't close until the shipment leaves. And so the shipment, which is the flat rate boxes, either priority or express, that truck doesn't leave to go to the central sorting facility until 6:30. And so I was no longer constrained by having to get out the door to be at the post office before 4:59. I could be at the back dock. I gave myself an extra hour to work. And I can tell you, when you're really, really busy, getting the hour. And even though the people at the post office are not supposed to accept gratuities, right? Having, here's a sample of the chocolate that I'm shipping, right? And things like that, right? Make friends with the people who are doing the shipping for you, right? I would, when I was not, even when I wasn't shipping chocolate, if I was receiving chocolate, right? It's the middle of the summer, it's Brooklyn, New York, and my mail gets delivered separately from my packaging. And so I would go and talk to both the mail carrier and whoever was delivering the packages, and I would say, hey, I'm expecting chocolate tomorrow, right? And I just want to let you know that I'm expecting chocolate tomorrow. So I want to make sure that you put the box in the shade. And oh, by the way, here's a bar of chocolate. What kind of chocolate do you like? Here's a bar of chocolate. They remember you. They remember you, and they will take care of you if you treat them as individuals. I mean, I did this recently with, here. I mean, when the UPS driver comes, if I see the UPS driver comes, I introduce myself. I let them know what it is, that I do. And in that box is chocolate, right? The same thing is true with the FedEx driver. I actually had a delivery for the Chocolat Moderne live stream in which the FedEx driver went out of his way to deliver the package and knock on my door because it had been delayed one day, right, in 80 plus degree, temperatures, and didn't want to leave the package in the sun and wanted to know that it was retrieved. And this is all because I'm making friends with the people, right, who are doing my deliveries, right, for me, and who are doing the shipping for me. I mean, I left Westchester County, left my local post office, and then moved to Brooklyn. I was there for roughly 2 years, and I went back to my post office in Westchester and filed the change of address notice. And I walked in, and the guy behind the counter, right, had recognized me and asked me how the chocolate business was after 2 years. He hadn't seen me physically in 2 years, but he recognized me, Mr. Chocolate Man. That's what everybody called me there. But it's really, 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 really important to make friends with the people who are doing your shipping. They're going to take care of your product. If there's a cold part of the truck, they'll put it in the cooler part of the truck, right? They'll make sure that things get offloaded properly. And they will recognize you, and they say years later. Number one tip when it comes to shipping, right, is to the extent that you can, get to know and to reward, right, the people who are handling your, right? So thinking about these kinds of boxes, it's part of this. Think about your carbon footprint, reduce, you reuse, recycle. I cannot stress how um, how challenging it is for me, right, to get a big box of something and it's in a big cardboard box inside of which is styrofoam and other things, bubble wrap, lots of bubble wrap, things which are not made from recyclable materials. Now, I don't know what the city of Prescott does with their recyclable materials. I do know that we have, it's single stream, so everything that is recyclable goes into one container. I don't know how to handle it. I don't know what they do when they get done with it, but at least I have some sense that something might be handled properly. So think about the overall footprint of what it is you're doing and try to do something which is as light as possible, right? It's really, really important. And it's something that if you're talking about ethical sourcing with cacao, for example, right? You want to make sure that this notion of ethics, right, and sustainability extends to all aspects of your packaging and the materials that you use for shipping, right? I think it's really, really, really important to be consistent all the way around, right? So with that, we're at the end of today's episode. So I just want to let people know, I want to make people know, is that this is the long form warm weather shipping tips and tricks post, right? And you can get to this post, right, by clicking, right, on the post for the episode. I didn't put all this information in the episode. I wanted to reach to it. I wanted to link to it. I also wanted to let everyone know that there are links in both posts to the original post on the Chocolate Life Archive. So you can go there and you can get some more background, decide whether you like stuff or not. There may be some things which provide you with more information or a little bit more inspiration about something that is you want to do. So you can go to, let me make sure I'm posting it. Yeah. So there's the Chocolate Life Archive, right? There is a link to the Chocolate Life Archive, which is here, right? And when you click on the actual card, you get to the post itself. So I just want to make sure you all know that. And on my way out, what I want to remind people is, number one, this coming Sunday, right? So today's Friday, so the day after tomorrow, the 23rd of June, 2024, starting at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, there's going to be the monthly AMA call. So if you're a member, you can click on the calendar, right? And if you click on the calendar, there's a link on the calendar to join the video call, right? But if you're not a member, there's a little thing that says you're not a member, you can't read down here. You can go and click on a join button. Again, I'm logged in, it says account. But if you're not logged in, you're not a member, it will say join. You can become a member today, tomorrow, right? So that you can be part of Sunday's call. It is an AMA, right? And so if you have a question about production, you have a question about marketing, you have a question about equipment, you have a question about anything, as long as it's associated with cocoa or chocolate, we can talk about it. Now, this Sunday, I have an agenda, and if you want to help me with that agenda, is I'm writing an article for International Confectionery Magazine. I'm the technical editor, and that article, the June-July article, is about ethical sourcing. And so if you are at all interested in the topic of ethical sourcing and you'd like to talk about what I want to talk about, or if you have some ideas about what you think I might want to cover in an ethical sourcing article, things that you'd like to see covered that you have never seen covered in a story about ethical sourcing, you can join me on Sunday and be a part of the call. But to do that, you have to be a member of the Chocolate Life. I'll also like to say is that at the bottom of every single post, right, there is a member discussion. And if you're not a member, you can't be a part of the discussion, right, until you join. There is a free tier. Obviously, I appreciate financial support. There are a number of levels of financial support that include benefits as well as coaching and consulting hours that are discounted. If you'd like to become a member and you're not a member, right, join, and you can be a part of the episode. You get newsletters and all kinds of other stuff that, as well as the ability to have direct access to me when you want to. So that's something to consider. I think it's a real, real cool benefit of being a member of the Chocolate Life. And with that, I want to thank everybody who's been here, who's watched even in whole and part. If you can, put a thumbs up on the video if you liked it, right? Subscribe to the PodSafe Chocolate channel on YouTube, and comment, share, feed the algorithm, right? Because feeding the algorithm is not about, it's about, number one, growing the community, right? But it's about making sure that more people who might be interested in what it is that we're doing here at PodSafe Chocolate and Chocolate Life know about it. And with that, everyone, I want to say, listen, have a great weekend, right? And to remind you, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Until the next time, everybody, ciao.